Well, good evening, and welcome to the LBJ Grasslands for part 2 of the Fenix HP30R V2 headlamp evaluation. Now, Fenix markets this as a search and rescue headlamp, so tonight we are taking the unit out for a search and rescue training exercise. We are looking for a lady named Margaret, who is a nature photographer believed to be in her early 50s. Margaret came out to the Valley View campground early this afternoon. Valley View is out in roughly that direction. Now, she struck up a conversation with a couple of people who were camping there. She said she would be working around the Valley View area, and she would be back no later than 3:30 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon. In fact, the three of them had made plans to have dinner together. Well, it gets pretty close to 5 o'clock, and the couple hits the panic button, calls 911. Wise County Sheriff is nearby, comes out to Valley View, and he sets up an incident command center. Now, in this scenario, I just happened to be out at Valley View getting geared up for a night navigation exercise. I talked to law enforcement, volunteered to help with the search. Here I am. Now, we have a physical description of Margaret, and we know that there are only 3 ways that she can go out of Valley View. One is southeast along the Blue Trail, which will eventually intersect with the road back in that direction. The other is to catch the shortcut trail, which comes down here and then cuts over and goes through the gates and eventually leads right to where I'm standing. The other is to head out west and eventually make it to Eureka Lake. My instructions are to pick up the shortcut trail, head out towards Valley View, up to the point where the blue-orange crosses roughly east-west, then head north and west and on out to Eureka Lake. I will be using the headlamp tonight exactly the way I would if this was a live exercise. I have no preconceived ideas about showing off different modes. I already did that in part 1. I'm going to use the headlamp just like I would in an actual SAR exercise. Given the amount of open territory we have out here, I'm anticipating spending most of the night in the flood and spot combined modes. 1800 will probably be the one used most, with intervals in 3000, and if I'm in more narrow confined space, I'll drop down to 400. Now, there's a reason I'm filming this right now. Actually, there's 2 reasons. One, I wanted to film the first couple of segments while there was still some light, just to give you an idea of how things look before it gets dark. The second is, I just started a timer as soon as the sun set in the distance. And I've talked about this in a other video or 2, the concept of survivability, and how as soon as the sun goes down on the horizon, survivability starts to decay very fast. So I'm going to be keeping up with the progression of time since the sun went down over the horizon. And I want you to keep up with the visualization that I use, one of a hourglass that gets turned over, and that sand is spilling down. That sand is Margaret's survivability. Every minute that I spend out in the field, every decision I make, how I respond to instructions from incident command, everything I do tonight is going to bleed away time, and time bleeds away survivability. So we're going to get a lot of views of the headlamp in this next segment. There will still be enough light so I can show you what the territory looks out on the way out to Valley View campground. And then once it gets dark, you can contrast that with how things look with the headlamp in the various modes. So that was a long intro, and I'm going to finish getting geared up, and then we'll get out there and let's go find Margaret. Well, here we are at almost 13 minutes. Now, the iPhone makes the background look brighter than it really is. I have the headlamp in 400 lumen combined mode right now. I don't really need it to make my way through territory. If you look right in front of me, and this is a very well-defined trail. I could probably go another, 15 minutes before I really had to have a headlamp. But it gives me two advantages. Number one is it's much easier to pick up eye shine, like out in the trees. And second, if Margaret or somebody came this way, let's say they were headed in this direction and they dropped a small piece of jewelry. Well, at dusk, I'd walk right by that. But if I have the headlamp down and I'm got good focus on the trail, I could pick that up. I'll get the reflection. And I'm going to say, I came out here about an hour ago. The sun was up, it was 51 degrees, and it is amazing just how cold it gets and how quickly it gets cold. When I started recording, it was already down to 47, and I think it's dropped at least another degree since I've been out here. It's only going to get worse. The forecast overnight low is going to be just below freezing. So that's how bad it can get. Imagine someone hurt or lost out here. That clothing that they had that was adequate during the day is not even going to come close to keeping them away from hypothermia at dark. So in any event, I'm going to press on here and then hit my west and north marks. Okay, we're at just over 29 minutes. I'm headed northwest on the Blue Trail out towards the Dolly Gates. I'm running in 400 lumen combined, and even though I'm in relatively a contained area with a bunch of stuff on my left and right, I'm going to bump this up one level and go into 1800 because I really need to see back into those trees. Oh, this is unbelievable. Just how deep I can see into the tree line. This is important because hikers, for example, will generally stay close to trails. But you get into hunters, photographers, they'll get off trail. They see a bird flying off in that direction, and that's what they're looking for. They'll be down into this area and back behind there real quick. They'll be looking at the bird or fumbling with their equipment, not looking at the ground, which is it's very, very uneven. All the ground around here is just, it's horse territory. It's a mechanical injury just waiting to happen. And so I'll stop and briefly look through areas like this. We'll have quite a few of them on our way up to the Dolly Gate. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it in this mode until we get there. Well, we're right at 52 minutes. I've made it through the Dolly Gates, and I'm headed approximately west out towards Eureka Lake. One of the things I really do need to pay attention, though, are these little turnouts right here. And what I'm looking for is drag marks. Sometimes a person is missing because they're injured, sometimes they're missing because they're lost, and other times they can be missing because they're the victim of foul play. I'm back down into 400 lumen combined mode, because the tree line, you can see, is pretty much collapsed on me. I continue to be pretty impressed with how easy it is to make it through territory, even though I would normally consider this a fairly low lumen option for this type of territory, but yet making my way through at this level is quite easy. I continue to be just as impressed as I was when I was out at Arbor Hills. But in any event, as we get out closer to Eureka, the territory will open back up. I'll get out back into 1800, and then when we search the lake, I'll do that in 3000. And by the way, what I'm looking for is any flash of blue. Margaret was wearing a very bright, almost neon blue jacket. So that's something that I only have to catch a tiny bit of that fabric to get a reflection. Well, here we are at Eureka Lake, just over an hour and 5 minutes. There's a bunch of dust blowing in the air. I'm at the northwest edge of the lake. From where I'm standing to the other side is a good 160 yards, according to Google Maps. I'm in 1800 lumen combined, and I can just barely make out the edge on the other side. Let's take it up one more. Okay, there's 3,000. Now I've got visibility just barely to the other edge of the lake. I can see the contour, I can see the trees. If there was something reflective out there, I could definitely see it. And again, that's 160 plus yards. And now as I kind of scan out over the lake, if there was less junk in the air, it would be even easier to see. But even with that, I mean, on the other hand, it is a dark night, so that provides some compensation. I can see well back into there. And so I'm going to do a quick scan around the lake. It's really nice to be able to do this totally hands-free and with the helmet, and then I'll check in when I get to the other side, because there's an area I think Margaret may have gone into, and that's where she got in trouble. It's about an hour and 16 minutes. It was very easy to search the lake in 3000 lumen mode. As I come around to the southeast edge, you can see kind of this depression, and the ground out here is unstable, which is why the U.S. Forest Service does not allow vehicles. I'm in 1800 lumen mode. What I always see wildlife and birds out here during the day, and you can see the fall risk is pretty high, so I'm going to switch into 3000 mode, lumen mode right here, and do a quick sweep. Now I've noticed two things so far. At the other end of the lake, I picked up some footprints. They're relatively recent, a tread that is indicative of a hiking shoe. That gives me some confidence that Margaret might have come along this area, because this area just does not get foot traffic, especially this time of the year. And then as I got to the position I'm at now, I picked up a pretty bad smell. Could be a big animal, it could be kill. Either way, I really need to stay frosty, because whatever it is, it's probably not good. So here we are at an hour 21, and I've come to this fork. I've actually shown this before. This is more of a maintenance path, but it follows a tree line. Now I'm in 1800 lumen mode right now. And so what I typically do is go to the edge of that rise ahead of me and then do a quick thermal scan. If I don't see anything, I would come back. I'm not going to do that in this video, because I've actually shown that in another video. Now, I picked up that track twice, just from the brief time it took me to get from the southeast edge of the lake to here. If that's Margaret, then she's decided to make a loop back to Valley View, not an out and back. I'm not sure I understand that, but I saw no sign whatsoever around the lake. We are at just over an hour and 37. It's decision time. Now ahead of me, this looks like the continuation of a trail. There's dual tracks going off, could be maintenance vehicle, could be from horseback. However, this, which looks like a much lesser trail, this is actually the continuation of the blue trail. So which way do I go? Imagine that Margaret did come this way. Every time I'm seeing soft dirt, I'm seeing that same track. And she has maybe a cell phone light. She wasn't prepared to be out in the dark. And so she sees this big, inviting area. Now you can go off a few hundred yards in this direction, and if you can actually work your way across the territory, you might eventually connect up with the Orange Trail. So remember, survivability, that hourglass is draining. It's really cold out here. Margaret could be shivering to death right now. Which way do I go? I could make a huge argument for going in this direction, but I'm going to play the percentages. I'm going to play that track. That's the best card I have. There's enough soft dirt going off in this direction that I'm going to invest about 50 to 100 yards and see if I can pick up that track. If I do, then I'm going to stick with the scenario that for some reason she decided to do a loop around back to Valley View instead of an out and back. But I think that's the best card I have to play right now. If I go 100 yards into soft dirt and there's nothing, then I'm going to have to backtrack, go till I hit a rise and do a thermal scan in this direction. But as soon as I can pick up that track, I'm just going to keep heading back on the blue trail towards the Todra Gates, and we're still in 1800 lumen combined mode. Just absolutely unbelievable downrange visibility. So just over an hour and 48, and here we are at a trouble area. Trail in front of me, and we've got a down tree completely blocking the trail. I've got the coordinates and location recorded to give to the U.S. Forest Service. But you notice we're going to have to go around it. Now imagine trying to make it through all of this brush. You've got these trees. You have maybe all the light you have is from your cell phone. This is just a mechanical injury waiting to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we found her unconscious just, 15 yards ahead of me. So I'm going to move around this very carefully. Since everything's kind of collapsed around me, I'm running in 400 lumen combined mode right now. Well, it's almost 2 hours, about an hour 58 and change. And remember what I said about smelling an animal or kill? This is why you have to be on your A game out here. There's a lot of stuff out here on both 2 and 4 legs, and none of it has your best interest at heart. I'm going to head through the Todra Gates and then move back into the lot that I started, contact Incident Command, and get further instructions. But every time I hit soft dirt, sand out here, I'm often picking up that track. So that still gives me confidence that, maybe she came this way. That's what I'm operating on at this point. So we're at 2 hours and 7 minutes, and once again, I'm at a split. I made it through the Todra Gates. I'm back in the same lot that I started. If you can see the comm towers out there, Valley View is in that direction. Now, normally, I would choose to go back this way. And I contacted Incident Command. As it happens, our horseback rider completed his sweep. He is headed back out along the road to where I was parked, and then he's going to take the same path that I did headed out, except where I broke off north and west, he's going to go south and west. So he's actually going to come back eventually through this direction and is prepared to go back out, and where I followed the blue, he could actually follow the orange. So my instructions are to head along the blue and then piggyback along blue-orange and make my way back to my truck. And if she hasn't been found at that time, I just wait for further instructions. So we're going to head on this direction, and as I've been doing before, I'm running pretty consistently in 1800 lumen mode right now, especially in these wide open areas. This gives me just unbelievable situational awareness, and it's just amazing. I keep saying that over and over, but I don't think I can say it enough. Well, we're at 2 hours and 16 minutes, and I've caught essentially the orange. The blue branches off back here and goes down that way, but after over 2 hours, I'm not very optimistic that... Whoa, wait a minute, flash of blue, right there. Okay, it's on ground level. I don't think that's a trail marker. I'm going to go across the open territory and check it out. Yeah, it's right in there. I don't think so. Okay, here we are. For purposes of this scenario, this is where we found Margaret. Okay, what happened? Well, she spent too much time out at Eureka Lake, headed back too late, got caught when it was getting dark. She only had her cell phone light. She had a map, and so she had this idea as a pretty avid hiker that she would do a loop back to Valley View, since she was already well southeast of the lake anyway. So she followed essentially the route that I took. Unfortunately, she got to that down tree, tried to make it around, had her phone out, had the map out, took a bad fall, hurt herself, and broke her phone and lost the map. So by the time she got to where I was in my last update. She was terribly disoriented. She only had a keychain light. She, just did whatever her intuition said. She turned right when she should have turned left. She eventually hobbled down to this point till she was so hurt, so cold, so unable to move. She just went over there in the trees and curled up. And that's where I ended up finding her. So we'll fast forward past all the first aid. The other thing I would do is I would put a couple of chem lights up on that tree and set up another flashlight as a beacon. I've contacted Incident Command. We're just waiting for first responders to come in and get her to a hospital. So at this point, the scenario is over. I'm going to make my way back to the truck, and then when I get there, that'll probably take us up to around 2.5 hours or so, and I'll do my final wrap-up. I'm going to leave it in 1800 mode, the way it is now, all the way in. Well, I guess I called that one. We're right at 2.5 hours, and there is the reflection of the taillights in the truck. Let's go up to 3,000 here for the final segment. There we go. Yeah, now I can see all the details in the truck. I could even see the license plate. Can't read it from this distance, but I could with a magnified optic. So that was an interesting exercise for me. I did that entire circuit, no map, no compass, no GPS. And tonight I'm carrying a rifle. So even though I'm working with what I call my lightweight, fast move loadout in terms of other gear, that's still an extra 10 to 12 pounds hanging off the front of me, which really changes my balance. So imagine, loading up with all your gear and picking up a couple of 5 or 6 pound weights in each hand and come out here and go hard for 2.5 hours straight with those weights in your hand. At first you don't feel it, but after a while you really will. So on a personal basis, I think it was a great exercise. The thing that really made that come together was the tracks, the sign. I'm going to walk up here so you can get just a final view of the headlamp. This is without question a magnificent headlamp for search and rescue. Yes, it's heavy, but I've also eliminated 2 other pieces of gear in compensation. This headlamp allows me to both move through territory as well as do really good area searches. And that gives me a lot of extra flexibility because normally to use a shoulder mounted light, I'm going to have to move my body. And the more I move my body, the more I have to move my feet. The more I have to move my feet in this uneven territory, I have to take my eyes off of what I'm searching for. So, if I were to rate it on a 1 to 10 scale, I'd have to give it a 9.5. The only reason it doesn't give a 10 is because of the 2 issues I mentioned in part 1 of the review. I still think that it was cold tonight, but I got my metabolic rate up enough that I didn't have to wear gloves. Even so, I'm still feeling it in my hands. If I was out any longer, I'd probably have to go to gloves. I think they should have made that knob and the associated button larger to accommodate glove usage, and I'd still like to see in these combined modes the step down go from 3,000 to 1,800, then down to 800 or 1,000, not 400. Make 400 your lowest mode, not 100. If they had done that, this light would have been a 10.5 or 11. Even so, I think the positives massively outweigh the negatives. The other thing I'll do is when I get unloaded here at the truck, I'm going to make a note at what the battery indicator is at. I ran it consistently in 400 or 1,800 for the entire exercise with short bursts like we're doing now at 3,000. And I've been talking for over 3 minutes and not a hint of step down at all in this 3,000 mode. So that's it for part 2. For part 3, I had envisioned a fairly long navigation exercise, but the one thing I've noticed out here in my last few outings is that the U.S. Forest Service has put a ton of new markers out here. So land navigation isn't quite the challenge that it used to be, and people seem to like these search and rescue scenarios. So what I think I'm going to do is a longer search and rescue exercise, and that'll give me an opportunity to test the battery out and push it even further. But that's it for tonight's exercise. Thank you very much. I appreciate your sticking with the video and listening to me for so long. You should pat yourself on the back for that. And I'm going to sign off here. Thanks again.